so many on our flesh have fattened, but if the noisome birds of prey will vanish from the sky some morning, the blessed sunlight will stay. Nos viva la casa, si se pueda. Athens Revolution Group.
What's up, Athens, Georgia? And 10. Now that's a hard act to follow, I tell you what. It's an honor to share the stage with all these great activists up here, to be introduced by Ed Tant, and to be able to speak to you on May 1st. My name is Brian from Athens Revolution Group. I'm a native of Athens, Georgia. I got my start in radical politics coming to this festival somewhat about 20 years ago. And this was around the time when George Bush invaded Iraq. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Okay, well, you know, unfortunately, we have part 2 of that go on, you know, just recently. Now, I'm kind of afraid of getting choked up in front of a large crowd, but, you know, I'd like to touch on a little bit of what Ed said there. You know, the great historian Howard Zinn did exposure of what the true nature of the birth of this system was like. The land of the free and the home of the brave. That's what they always say about it. But what's the reality of this system and its birth? It's the genocide of the native people. It's the enslavement of the African people. And I really encourage anybody out there who hasn't read A People's History of the United States to read that. Because this is an exposure of how the birth of this nation was really like, not told by the rich white men who were the only people who were allowed to practice democracy. They always talk about democracy and all this kind of thing. But it's only very recently that black people and anybody other than rich white men have gained the right to vote in this country. The truth is, the fundamental thing about this system, it's not that it's a democratic system. It's that it's a capitalist, imperialist system. And everything else flows out of that. Its democratic processes flow out of the needs of this capitalism, imperialism, economy that this is based on. That's why we see these invasions overseas. That's why we see this war in Iraq, in Afghanistan, by the way, which Obama is escalating. This is not time for us to be complacent, because people think that they got rid of George Bush. Obama has escalated the war in Afghanistan. They have just given this system a facelift, and they have demobilized, unfortunately, the anti-war movement, which needs now to be more active than ever. Right. So the words that Ed said, that's always the way that we have achieved change in this country. And that's the way that we can achieve justice and we can end these occupations. We're not going to do it through the ballot box. If that had worked, we would have just done it just now. You know, and that's what a lot of people thought when they voted for Obama. But what has Obama actually done in practice? So let's take a look at that. You know, he's just basically given a facelift to the system. And, you know, so we live under a capitalist imperialist system. Now, what does that mean? That means that the means of production, the thing that people need to live in this society, are monopolized by a tiny handful of people. And the rest of us have to sell ourselves to those people in order to have the means to live. We don't have any ownership ourselves. It's not like the system of slavery where people were owned outright, where they bought and sold people. And this is a system where they rent people. They rent you by the hour. And they do this not only in this country, but around the world. There was a booth out there earlier on Juarez. I encourage people to check out the situation in Juarez. This is a great example of what imperialism does to people and does to countries all over the world. In Juarez, they have these maquiladoras, which are basically sweatshop factories. In these maquiladoras, the starting wage is about $40 a week. And this is in a society, in a place where everything costs about 80% of what you're going to pay for here. And tell me if you can live off of that kind of money. So there's been extreme poverty. The only way that a lot of people can live there is to take part in the drug trade. And that's also true in the inner cities of the United States, where people are systematically locked out of education, any kind of real jobs. You know, all this stuff is being undercut. So we have to take a real look at what is the nature of this system. What is the nature of these problems that vex humanity? Why are all of these immigrants forced into the shadows? Why do all these immigrants come here from Mexico? It's because they don't have the ability to survive in their home countries. If they had that ability, you think they want to pack up and leave their family and everybody they know where they come from to come here to be treated like a second-class citizen, to be forced into the shadows? What would you do if that was you and you were in that situation? And those were the choices that you faced. So we got to think about that. We have to start thinking about, stop thinking like Americans and start thinking about humanity. Because this is just a country, you know, this is only a particular historical phase that we're living in. We have to think about the bigger picture and how can we get to a world beyond all these horrors. So I want people, you know, this is what we're out there trying to do every day and build a movement for resistance, and we're trying to build a movement for revolution where we can actually do away with this capitalist system and establish a new system in place where we can actually overcome all these things. The oppression of minorities, the situation where 1 in 8 young black male are in prison, you know, all of these horrors, these invasions and all of these things. I encourage people to go over there to our booth, to the Revolution booth. We have the analysis to back this up, how we can transform society, how we can build a new world. And we're out here telling people about our leader, which is Bob Avakian, who has analyzed the history of socialist and communist revolution throughout throughout history, analyzed both its strengths and its shortcomings. And if anything short of that is not going to point the answer to all these problems that are vexing humanity. And this is all based on a scientific understanding of the nature of this society and the nature of how we can actually overcome these very profound crimes and atrocities that are always committed against people. On that note, I'd just like to say it's been an honor to speak with you tonight, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Stick around.